sad. I've had many kids transition in mainstream in my class. So I could a couple like third and fourth graders in my class because I can get
It's 2 minutes. I'm good. But it's 2 minutes early. Yeah.
so that's we can't start with us.
I can't believe like they're all there and then they're gone. It's not It's Pam and then Rich.
Whenever you are.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order at 6:30 p.m. It is Monday, all day, February 12th, and it is our third budget workshop meeting tonight. I'm going to, we have a quorum here, right? Yeah, everybody's here. We have a quorum, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to Ms. Mangini to kick us off.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We do have quite a bit this evening, and we're going to be bouncing in between myself, Mr. Ruggiero, Ms. Borges, and then probably back to me to make certain that we get you through this entire section, which includes the accounts that you see highlighted here: purchase professional services, property services, utility, transportation.
Just
Hit the button,
no, I
man.
think I don't know the mic.
It might have turned itself off. Just hit the button. Here.
Sounds like
The
it might
light
be
should come on.
Yeah, the light would be green if it's working.
There we go. That better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. As I was saying, we do have a lot to get through this evening, and we will be touching upon these accounts, and they do encompass both the facilities portion as well as special education, and I'll be filling in the gaps. Okay, we're going to start off with Object Code 300, and they include purchase professional services that include the categories that you see here: contracted instructional services, clinical costs, substitute services, in-service and PD, plant maintenance contracts, and legal services. And as we noted last week, new to this category for fiscal year 25 is the substitute services. So as you recall from salaries, we had the reduction of 1.4 million, and I did note that it would show up here under the 300 object code. So it's the 1.4 million because we are now paying the vendor. The substitutes are no longer district employees. And we also, I should mention that as we go through this evening, obviously you'll find a breakdown in the accounts that are tabbed 300, 400, and 500 in your books, as well as the appendix sections. And I did make notes on what pages to go to, so I will guide you accordingly. Okay, you'll note that we do have overlap. So the in-service and professional development accounts were covered by Ms. Borges under curriculum last week. And many of these accounts, as we go through them, will, under the 300s, will be covered under facilities and the special education reviews. So I'm going to discuss this handful with you. The in-service and, the school physician, the school physician account of 0597 is actually reflected on page 60 of your budget book. This account is once again level funded, and it primarily pays for the school physician along with the school nurse to provide talks to 6th grade boys and girls as part of our health class. So you will see that this has been pretty much level funded year over year. Account code 1130 is for the athletic trainer. The district, through the town purchasing agent, did bid for this service back in fiscal year '21, and we had a 3-year contract with the company. This year, while we do have the ability to extend that for another year, the company isn't sure they can match the pricing. They were supposed to just be within a percentage. So at this point, so we can get a firm number into the budget as quickly as possible, we are working with the town purchasing agent and going out to bid. I believe it might be out already, and I think it's due by February 29th. So hopefully we'll have a firm cost. Right now, what you see in the budget book is an estimate. Legal services is on page 65 with a breakdown for you. And we do now have an account not just for regular education legal services, but also for special education. And as you may recall, those of you who went through this process before, special education budget expense for legal was never separate. And we did that in fiscal year '21, so we're now able to look back at the history of costs. It also allows us to do appropriate state reporting where we have to separate our special education costs. We have level funded the legal expense. We do have the teachers union contract to be negotiated in fiscal year '25, and based on our review and historical data, we feel that this funding should be adequate. Account code 757 is purchased professional services, and it covers funding for the filming of the BOE meetings, our food service consultant, and a line that was put in a few years ago for superintendent designated professional services. And this was funded previously at the request of the superintendent, and it's set to be used for items like professional services, inclusive of consultations and whole school system improvements. To give you a little bit more of an idea of what we've spent it on, we spent it a couple of years ago, some of it, on Partners for Educational Leadership, bringing in some opportunities for professional development and whole system discussions. And we also used some of that funding for the indoor air quality studies to begin that we are mandated to do. So we did some of those as well. And I'm just going to pause here before I turn it over to facilities. So if you have any questions on the specific areas that I just mentioned, I'm happy to start there.
Ms. Lance,
Oh, Pam, how much are we paying substitutes a day now? Do we know?
Yeah, I don't have that at the top of my list here. I believe we increased it to about 130 or 135, 130. Thank you. I knew it was in that vicinity.
Okay. And I know you told us at the last meeting, but approximately, and I know you can't tell us exactly, how many subs are we looking for on a daily basis? And I know it changes by day, I know it changes by season, I know it changes by everything. I'm just thinking on a regular day, like today, how many subs did we have in the system today? Do we know that?
I honestly don't. I will get Courtney Brown to give us a complete report on that and to submit it. I think she shared some info with you as a board, but I'll make certain you have that information.
Thanks, Pam.
Mr. Carter?
Thank you. Ms. Mangini, what was the projected cost back then for a 4-hour, what do you think the cost is going to be this year for Kelly Services for this fiscal year? We're looking at $1.4 million for next year possibly. And what was the cost in 2022-23? I'm not sure where in the book it is.
Yeah.
So where's the comparison?
When we presented this consideration to the board last year to actually consider moving to Kelly Services, we do pay a premium on every sub and every hour they work. And off the top of my head, I think it's around 28%. But we did a complete analysis, and at the end of the day, we estimated that Kelly Services was costing us about $170,000 more And we felt that was value added for the fill rate because we simply could not get substitute teachers. Out of the 1.4 million though, I think if I can recall the breakdown, and again, I will share that with all of you, we estimated about a total of 900,000 out of that 1.4 for substitutes, day-to-day substitutes. Also in that amount is the cost of interns and the cost of our building subs. So that was all broken out separately. So I will definitely get that complete breakdown to you.
So, Mr. Cormier, those numbers were provided to us, I think it was just the same that they were emailed to us.
Okay.
So just so you know, it went back to fiscal year 14,
Okay,
so
great.
the breakdown of those numbers.
But that was not the breakdown that I think Chris is looking for. I think you're trying to
I'm just
just
looking-
decide figure out what Kelly is costing us.
What they're gonna cost us this year?
Yes.
And then what was our cost without Kelly the year before?
Right.
Is that in there?
That you
It's
do
okay,
have.
sorry.
You're right. And my pen stopped working, so I gotta make sure I can write this down. Okay.
Pam, can we also get, to follow up on Chris, can we also get a number of how many unfilled classrooms there were a day before we got Kelly Services?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And are we still paying teachers if they cover classes?
Yes, we are.
And how much is that a class?
That's a good question. We pay for a 6th period. Normally, is it 0.2? I'm looking at Kristen and Mike. No. We will get you the exact information, but to your point, as far as the budget, Sue, it's that $15,000 that remains in the salary line item is set aside for that.
Thank you. I'm just curious to know.
Yeah.
Ms. Mangini, just a quick question. You gave the breakdown of the 0757 line. Can you just repeat that again?
It includes the filming of the BOE meetings, the food service consultant, and the superintendent designated professional services.
Any further questions, Mr. Hendrick?
Yeah, just to follow up on that 0757, we get a breakdown of what those, the superintendent designated professional, what that is, and what dollar amounts are expended in each. I'm guessing it's more than one singular item.
Yeah, it was pretty much what I explained. It was set to be used for professional services, like,
Yeah, now I understand what you said, but can we get that in writing, just a clear
you
breakdown?
want the breakdown of what it was spent on in the past. It has other things in there. I'll try to extract what was considered the, under that umbrella, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty significant, it's 110,000, just so we kind of see where each of those dollars go, and, I mean, it's kind of a random category, so.
It is, and I will tell you that the superintendent designated professional services was put in 21 or 22 at 75,000. So that is the big jump. If you go back a couple of years, you will see a big jump in that account, and that's the amount. We've never actually spent that much in there, but that is the
I'd
amount.
just be curious to know exactly what it's being
Absolutely.
spent on.
Yep.
And then with legal fees, 0756, a few years back, we were at 150, dropped to 90, and now we're at 120. It's just a big kind of swing. Is that, and it doesn't actually have, it has actual expenditures.
It's actually, I will tell you, since I've been here, the budget for legal was 240,000. We lowered it since I've been here to 220, and we separated it between regular education and special ed.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, it's just a kind of a big swing from 230 to 160 to 220. So I'm just curious why 2022, 23, it's, quite a bit lower.
Again, you're looking at the actuals a lot, again, with the pandemic, but I'll be happy to give you a breakdown of it. More
Yeah.
info I can give you, the better decision.
Yeah, just so I can kind of understand what the ebb and flow is
Sure.
of that, and how we got to where we are now. And the athletic trainers, are they is that a contracted service, so they service both high schools?
Correct.
And so is it typically the same person, or is it just who's ever on call at that day?
I honestly don't know because it is a service, so I'm guessing that there are different people. I know most districts, including us, we struggle, and I don't know the high school principal is
Jack
here.
can answer.
And Katie, I didn't see Katie come in. Perhaps you can shed some light on that?
Historically, there's an athletic trainer at Bunnell and one at Stratford High School. They cover all the events for us. So we have the same person in all our events.
You do, okay.
Sporting events. Sport events. Sporting events.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the substitutes, I know, so last year, our adopted budget was 1.43, and then we were at 1.4 million with Kelly Services. In the certified substitute salary from from our adopted budget last year, is that just salaries and then there's benefits, or?
No benefits.
For the substitutes,
Yeah.
yeah, no benefits, that's just the salary line.
So outside of maybe having a better fill rate, our numbers are pretty equal over the last couple of years.
Actually, if you really look at what we provided you with the breakdown, you will see that we were more often than not underfunded. Susan Nicholson provided this for 10 years back, so you can really have a good look back.
Where would I find that?
That was something that was provided to you on Sunday.
Okay.
It was the substitute account breakdown, account number 0508. And we were in deficit most years up until fiscal year, actually not until 2021 when the pandemic hit. And even though we went from approximately a $900,000 budget, we went up to 1.1 million, and we were still short most years until the pandemic hit. And then obviously we initially weren't filling positions. We weren't allowing interns in the building, so that was the savings. We were having trouble finding subs who wanted to come into the building at that point. We were a hybrid schedule as well, which limited the number, so we did have a significant year-end balance. Again, in fiscal year 22, similar, and then it gets a little bit lower by fiscal year 23. So we've been seeing an increase in the costs and the amount of substitutes when we had true data to really compare it to when we had a normal school year, and that's been a while.
Can we get printouts of these pages that are being emailed?
Oh, sure, sure.
I mean, I know there's just a lot of pages there, and I've kind of gone through most of them, but it's just, so I can track them and follow them.
No, that makes sense, absolutely. We'll get you a hard
I mean,
copy.
just for me, I don't have a laptop, and, I don't know if the other members.
That's all
want,
right,
but
we'll provide it to everybody.
I know Bill would like it the same way, maybe some of the younger generation does it differently, but.
No problem.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Mr. O'Brien?
I guess this would be more for the principals. Do the trainers go to away games?
Yes.
So actually, there's times where there might be something going on at home and something away, so some games won't have a trainer available, right? Which,
Yeah, and normally what happens if a visiting team comes with no trainer, then our trainer will support the visiting team as well.
I see it is posted on the town website, which is an example, I guess, of how the town and the Board of Ed work together in one area. I'm wondering about the substitute teachers. Was that put out for bid, or was Kelly just hired for?
Actually, we secured the services of Kelly through the state bid site. There were a couple of different vendors that we could have chosen, and we determined that they probably would fit our needs best, and their pricing was lower and more competitive.
Thank you.
Ms. Crawford?
Mrs. Mancini, line item 0756 with legal services, does that include board legal services?
Yes, it's all legal services.
And that's accounting for, I know Mr. Henrik had mentioned having the board attorney at meetings. Was that factored in, that
I
additional
was
cost?
not, because I was not made aware that that was going to be an ongoing cost. So no, there's no extra money. We just budgeted based on our known costs.
Any additional questions? section, which is
Mr. Ruggiero.
Mr. Ruggiero.
And you can go over to page whoops, sorry, Rich, I went the wrong way. 145, I'm sorry. And Rich will guide you through.
Good evening. So tonight we're going to look at the facilities budget, discuss everything from custodial purchases to utilities. So if you look at this first page, you can see briefly, we're pretty much running flat on most everything. We do have an increase in service contracts of 14,000. So that little increase, we had our elevator company, we had a TKE who serviced Stratford High School during construction, so we kept them on. And we also had Schindler. We got rid of Schindler last year and went with TKE. So we had a slight increase going with them, but the town also uses them. So we wanted to at least stay with the town, with who they use. And it's not a major, huge increase in there. Maintenance contracts you see on here on the 0690, you'll hear about that next week when Matt Rivers does his. That falls under IT. That's pretty much all I have on this page. Oh, the cleaning contract. Cleaning contract went up in price due to minimum wage increase. That's the $16,000 increase, and that came with due to that.
If you don't mind, Rich, I'm just going to add that we did bid out for that cleaning
Correct.
contract. That is for flood, and that was built into the contract.
That's the pool.
Yeah. No, it's
Well,
not
it's
the
all the
pool.
flood, I'm sorry.
It's all the cleaning. It's the custodial services. So if we go on to page 8, if you look at food service repair and maintenance, so there's a deficit there. It was all product, a lot of freezers, refrigerators, and certain cooking equipment. We've been replacing that on a regular basis now. And that's where you'll see that difference in dollars for that account. And again, you'll notice most of everything is just running flat. And here on page 9, again, there's really nothing on here. Everything is running flat.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yeah.
This may have been asked last year, but there's so many school buildings, there's what, 13?
Yep.
13 buildings, and they all kind of run on a cycle. That's why not everything is figured in every year, right? Like the shades and blinds at one building
Correct.
will go, okay.
Yeah, the schools all have them. Some of them are just get so old and worn out.
Right.
So we continually always put that in so we could purchase new ones. So if we go to electricity, I'm going to jump to the last page of the. So if you look at page 13, let me just jump to that page. I'll be able to explain that
Actually,
much.
151.
No, I'm sorry, 48, I know.
Yeah, well, I'm calling it 13.
You're right, too.
Okay. So if you look at electricity, 285,900, there's a difference between 24, 25 with the reduction. So what that reduction came from UI and Pura for $150,000 that we didn't pay. We didn't have to pay. So $150,000 right off comes off of that price. Also, too, our solar had given us a really good benefit to pick up the balance of that between Johnson and Bunnell. We have a really big savings. We're like $50,000 savings at Bunnell. And about $52,000 at Johnson. So it was a good savings to bring us to that, believe it or not. And now we have 3 other schools that will have solar going on. We have Second Hill Lane that has them. We have Chapel that has them. They're coming in now as we speak. Worcester already has them, and Stratford High will be having all their material dropped off within the next month. And then they'll jump on top of that to get right on there. And that is our reduction. If I jump down to the gas, so the gas on here, most of the pricing from 24 was based off of 23 with gas prices being really high. Oil prices were high, even though we were just basing the price off of both of those. And it turned out we ended up with a really big reduction in gas prices coming down. That's where you'll see that 211,000 is a reduction. We kind of bid high and then realized that with the pricing coming down that we didn't have to bid high. That's where you'll see that. The water, for the most part, the water's pretty steady. There's not much of an issue there.
Mr. Triad?
Working? Yes.
Yeah.
Rich, how are you?
Good.
We know over the past 6 years or so, the council's been doing all the solar on all the schools. Did we complete them all?
Not yet.
I'm sorry, wrong question. I know that you said that the next three are being done soon. Was there one left that we didn't do? Or have we approved them all?
They've all been approved.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
Again, so the Johnson House has them,
Yeah,
Benell has them, Second Hill Lane has it now.
Right.
Worcester's completed. Chapel's being done right now, and Stratford High will be next on the list, the final.
so they'll all be done, so
Yeah,
it'll
they'll
take
all be
full
done.
effect next year, you'll see.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So these, those prices from the solar were based on 4 quarters, which should be, is a pretty good savings.
That's a great savings, and you'll see that continue to trend downward
Correct.
next year.
Plus the other schools, you take like, Flood has them,
Yeah.
right? Franklin has them.
Right.
Smaller units, they're not producing, they're producing what they should be for the size that we have.
Understood. And then from the gas heat perspective, I know there were a couple big boilers that were done over the past 6 years or so.
So
What's the oldest one left?
the oldest one left is the one we have in Honeyspot and the
Honeyspot.
one we have in Worcester.
Honeyspot.
But that one, Worcester's gonna be getting done, not Worcester, Wilcoxon, and that'll be getting done very soon,
Gotcha.
from what I was told by the town.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. O'Brien?
Hey, Rich, I noticed, minor little thing, flag replacement, is that American flags?
Oh, yeah.
If you ever need them, please reach out to us at the Veterans Museum, we have tons of them that have been donated.
Oh, you're
I'd be
kidding.
glad to give them to you.
I'll remember
Come
that.
someday and I'll give them half a dozen to you.
I like that. Yeah, the wind really takes a toll on them. Any other questions?
Yeah, so with, 0956, the flood cleaning contract,
Yep.
is that just for the pool or?
No, that's not the pool. That's just the custodian. So, Flood has an outsourced custodial service, always has.
Why does Flood have it, and do we consolidate, or have we talked about consolidating those services?
It's a cost
in the
savings.
town?
It comes down to a cost savings. They've been contracted out since the day that school opened.
Okay.
We have not had our own custodians in there. It's always been an outsource.
Okay, so it would cost us more to run?
Yes.
Our own custodians?
Yeah, it's a big school, so I need as many custodians as they have at the high schools.
Okay, okay. And have we talked to the town about consolidating that service with them, or are we just getting this pricing we're getting because we're using the same?
Yeah, I mean, we went out to bid. There was always one company we went out to bid, and the low bidder came in, but they never responded back to us, and then now we have the company that we have who's doing a fantastic job in there.
Okay, all right.
And we did bid that out with the town at the same time, so we're all
Yeah.
the same company.
Okay, great, thank you.
On that same topic, the head custodian's a Board of Ed employee, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a Board of Ed head custodian there, correct.
see him all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah. He maintains the pool.
Any other questions, Mr. Lance?
Just a little bit of history because, she would appreciate it that I said this. When Karen Rodeo was on the board, she fought very hard for the, town to pick up some of the money for the flood pool, and they did it, correct?
Yes.
They did, and actually, Mr. Barton happens to be here this evening from DBS, and it's when I first arrived, so we need to extend a thank you to him for getting a meter in there, because it seemed like a wonderful idea, but it wasn't as easy as we had hoped. So, thank you, Eric. Appreciate the help.
So all those other years, we've paid for all the flood pool.
Correct. Now it gets split with the town.
They have birthday parties.
That's true.
They do.
Any other questions?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Ruggiero. Next up is Ms. Mangini again.
I'm back.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to direct you now to page 78, and we're going to start talking about transportation. No, we're not. What happened? There we go. Okay. So as you can see, there is a significant increase to transportation. And the majority of it is in the special education area, which Heather will talk about a little bit more when she does her overview of SPED. But just a couple of things I want to point out. Student transportation line there is our regular transportation with Durham school buses. We negotiated a contract a couple of years ago, and we locked into a 1.5% increase for fiscal year 23 and 24, which was phenomenally wonderful. At that time, there were mostly double-digit contracts that were being signed. What we did in order to get that was agree to single-year options for subsequent 3 years, fiscal year 25, 26, and 27. And the agreement was that Durham could not go beyond 3% increase. However, if they felt they couldn't provide the service for that percentage, or we felt we could do better elsewhere, we could mutually agree to just part ways or go out to do a formal bid. We've been working with them over the last couple of months, and we are cautiously optimistic that they're going to be able to meet that single-year option, contractual obligation, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll know that for sure. We did build in 3% into the budget, so hopefully it will not be more than that. I sincerely doubt it will be much less, but it could be, so stay tuned. We will hopefully try to sharpen and get a little closer to that number. In special education transportation, the costs involved there are not only the students that we transport in district for our special education students, but it's also for out of district. And the increase, as I said, Heather will elaborate on, but it's primarily due to the number of students being transported who are out of district students, as well as increased behaviors requiring more specialized transportation. In addition, we're actually experiencing an increase in vendor pricing. We had a company within the last month or two that actually went out of business mid-year. So we're really struggling to try to find companies that can provide the services that we need. This seems to be statewide, if not a national problem, not just with special education transportation, but all transportation. It's really difficult to find drivers, and the vehicles are available. It's the drivers that the companies are struggling with most of the time. So we are looking into options, and we are talking with the town purchasing agent to see if this is something that we can bid, how we would bid. It's a little more complicated because we are pretty convinced not just one company could actually handle all our needs. So we are working on that, however, to try to make it a little bit better for the district cost-wise. And you should know that every single Board of Ed vehicle that we have is fully utilized as much as we possibly can as well. So we do have a significant increase here, obviously. Tuition for regular program tuition is Object Code 560. There's a better breakdown for you on page 82. This includes tuition for regular education programs and special ed programs. The increase to the account for 1155, which is one of the regular education programs, is a projected increase in facility tuition costs per student. So basically, the places that we are sending our students to are telling us to anticipate an increase. On page 84, you will find the breakdown of regular education students, and note that this account covers expenses for Stratford students attending like VOAG and aquacultural schools. Alternately, also in that line is the increase for the account in 1156, which is for magnet schools. This increase is based on an increase projected for tuition, but it's also for an increase in the number of students attending. And this is primarily 6-6 magnet school, as well as Fairchild Wheeler. And you may recall, at least when I first arrived here, we were in the midst of a lawsuit with the city of Bridgeport and with some issues with Fairchild Wheeler. It was resolved within about a year of my arrival. And it's really a cost-effective agreement for us. We pay for the first 50 students at $3,000 per student. So we budget a flat $150,000 in that line item. And we are not charged beyond the 50th student. We currently have 78 students attending Fairchild Wheeler, so it really is a cost savings for us. Lastly, in this area, we have Object Code 590, again on page 86, there's a breakdown. And this area includes all of these accounts, which I will address except for telephone services and computer services that Matt Rivers will address with you next week. So there is a slight increase in travel and mileage, and it's a result of contractual increases to travel stipends. Conferences and workshops can be found on page 90 and include account 0758, which you have already been provided a breakdown on that account. And the account basically covers conferences attended by the superintendent, assistant superintendent, chief operating officer, PPS director, and other members of cabinet, along with funding for any other staff the superintendent chooses to send to the conference that he deems worthwhile. And account 0853 is a contractual obligation for secretary training and workshops, and it's an every other year expense. So it does look a little funky on your sheet, but there's $800 in there now. There'll be nothing next year, and then $800 in the subsequent year. The increase in the liability insurance line that you see here is primarily a result of the town's shift of liability insurance that we have talked about with regard to buildings, as well as preliminary projections from the district's insurance broker for potential increases to general liability, automobile, and umbrella insurance. Like the town, these are estimates. We do have a meeting set up with our district broker for later this month, and we will continue to go through this renewal process over the next couple of months with the hope that we should have firm numbers by May. But that is the process. Workers' compensation that you see listed here actually is reflecting a slight reduction. It's an estimate based on historical data along with a review of known employee cases. Historical data has some value, but in this area, not a whole lot, because obviously it's based on employees getting hurt. We never know when or how that's going to happen or who that's going to happen to. But sometimes, unfortunately, we do have some employees that really have been injured and are long-term, so we kind of know that they're going to be carried through. We have an idea of what that cost can be. So we use our best judgment, and based on all of that, we made the determination to take that modest decrease for this year. or fiscal year 25. Athletic and other transportation line includes transportation expenses for athletic events and field trips. And the field trips are basically overseen by the Office of Teaching and Learning, and they're to fund the buses, transportation for field trips to places like the Stratford Library, Booth Park. It also includes job shadow trips, jazz and marching band transportation, along with the high school athletic director requests for transportation to events. It's also important to note that this line item here also includes McKinney-Vento transportation costs, and that accounts for almost half of it. And as you may recall, we have talked a little bit about that in the past. We have a significant number of homeless students, unfortunately, that we are transporting. And whenever possible, we do work with the other districts, the sending district oftentimes of where they're living, so that we can at least recoup 50% or so of that cost, which we are entitled to do. Let's see, other student support services there, again, a small increase. It's basically level funded, but that increase reflects an increase in what we are being charged for police coverage. We do have a contract in place with the police department, and due to some misunderstandings in the past, we have actually gotten a little bit of bargain on the invoicing, but since they are too feeling some budget crunches, they have had to have us now fulfill the agreement the way it was written, so there is a slight increase there. And then other purchase services reflects an increase in printing, primarily due to an increase in copy paper. And that basically covers that area. So I'm going to pause here before I turn it over to special ed review if you have any questions on this area.
Yeah, quick question just to start. I hear there's been, this is a bigger problem than just Stratford, but getting drivers for buses. Are we seeing any recuperation for that? I hear students aren't making it to games, kids aren't making it to events, things that they're...
I will say that as far as regular transportation to and from school, while many of our surrounding communities in this, and just communities in the state were struggling with even getting students to school in a timely manner, Durham was very good. They got us what we needed. I got a little bit excited recently because they were able to look a little bit more closely at some of our routes, which they do periodically, and they were actually able to reduce to 72 passenger buses. I got excited because I thought they were just free buses, and I'm looking at Katie and Jack because I was, here's our answer to the athletic events. Well, the reason they had to take such a hard look was because they can't find drivers. So I have been working with the high schools and the athletic directors, and we do have a temporary Band-Aid in place because it's primarily where they're struggling are those earlier events. Because we're on a tiered system with transportation, we don't always have the buses available for those to get kids at 1:30 or 2 o'clock or even 2:30, because our buses really aren't available from the elementary runs until about 4 o'clock. And because we have 8 elementary schools, just about all the buses are in use at that time. So it is a struggle, but we have found some outside vendors that will be able to accommodate us temporarily. They're very costly, but at this point we all agreed that we need to make this work. But don't forget, through planning, and it will come to the full board in the very near future, Ms. Borges has requested 2 additional vehicles, which will also help. They're smaller passenger vehicles, but they will help with those smaller teams like golf to get kids there. And we also put in the budget 2 new drivers to help us. And it won't just be for athletics. It will, as Heather mentioned, I think last week, it's primarily for the Strive program, but they don't need the buses usually much beyond 1 o'clock. So it actually will serve double duty, and it could be a real cost savings in the long run for us. So we are on top of it.
Next, Mr. O'Brien?
Concerning our vehicles, do the drivers gas up at Public Works?
They actually gas up at the bus depot. And that's because we do buy the gas, and we do buy it with the town. We bid out for it. but they do track it through the bus company.
And then how about, service, does Public Works service the vehicles for us?
Durham actually does that as well. Some of them, they check them, but we also, does Public Works has its own maintenance
For
garage?
their vehicles, yeah.
Interesting, because I'm not sure, I'm gonna double check on that, but I don't know if you know, Rich, but I think we send them to different garages, correct?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. Durham does most of it, but then tire changes goes to Breezy Point and custom Vandetic, stuff like that.
We'll have to talk to the town about that one. Thank you.
Well, Durham probably puts they go out for bid probably like the town does on gas prices. I know the town gets a good deal.
Well, we bid with the town.
Yeah.
So, and I think I read it, but I think there was some conversation about coaches doing some of the driving on some of the smaller buses. Is that something we've looked at or are looking at?
There are some reservations. I mean, they would have to get the proper licensing. We would have to make certain that we get their driver's record, and we'd have to get them on our insurance. Not impossible to do. I'm not so sure it's the best practice, but definitely out there as a suggestion. I think the one we came up with temporarily might be a little bit better if we could get those vehicles, but we still are gonna struggle with those events that have more students on the teams because we need larger vehicles and the coaches would really have to get a higher level.
Yeah, just for some of the
licensing.
smaller
Right,
buses,
right,
yeah.
right.
And then, other student support services, did I understand that is just for police services during special events or?
Yeah, it's for a variety of things associated with any of our athletic events or our school events. It's custodials, coverage, I'm trying to think, it's officials, it's an account that has a lot of different services paid through it.
So it would include police service, referees, cleanup,
Correct.
things of that nature?
Yes.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dell. Just to kind of Mr. Henrik's point, and I know Mr. Kennedy and Mr. O'Brien and I are on the athletic review committee, and it sounds to me, and maybe Ms. Borges, you can correct me, to maybe clarify or understand a little better. So I know at the athletic review committee, one of the things, the topics that came up about getting these smaller athletic teams in time to events. And the suggestion was made by the ADs to have like a 15-passenger van and then have that. But now with the need of it, of these vans for Strive, the driver would be like one of our custodians, one of our drivers that we have, right? So would they also then service that through Strive, but then be able to use those vans for these athletic teams and have them do the driving so that it's not an additional cost of adding like the coaches on?
Correct.
Okay.
That's the plan.
All right, so it's, okay, makes sense now, okay.
Mr. Yep?
Two questions, ma'am. Going down to the Bridgeport, the first 50 were at $3,000?
$3,000 per student, yes.
And what if we go over, we don't pay them?
Correct. We don't pay for any additional students.
How long is that deal good for?
I don't recall, I looked at it just yesterday. I don't recall any end date on it, but I will check that. It's a good question.
I'd be
Yeah.
interested. And then just it might seem like a small thing, but maintenance of the fleet vehicles. Do we have contracts with VIP car wash, stuff like that for car washes? Okay, where are those?
I'm not sure where the money's coming out of that budget.
Okay.
You buy $35, you get 10 cleans or something like that.
Yeah, I was just, I know it's small
I'm not
peanuts.
sure where it
I
comes
just,
out of.
every time I get my truck washed, I see a Board of Ed car going through and I'm wondering, I was just curious.
Yeah.
We'll clarify that for you too. It's on the tip of my tongue and I just can't remember where it is.
Thank you.
Mr. Brandon?
Page 84, just the account codes are 1155 and 1156. Can we just get a breakdown by school as per student for fiscal year 24 and 25?
just the number of students and what we're paying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further questions? Okay, we'll move on to Ms. Borges and special ed budget.
Good evening. So I'm going to jump right in to our special education services. Special education services, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a backstory first so that when we get to the expenditure page, you understand what those expenditures are paying for, okay? So special education services are legally mandated. They're necessitating allocations within the fluid pupil service budget. I emphasize that this pupil service budget is fluid because districts face uncertainty regarding the incoming and outgoing students, complicating the identification of needs. So to address this challenge, we take a data-driven approach, incorporating our past records, our current individual education plans, and an understanding of district capacity in order to estimate and prepare the budget for all of you, okay? It's very important for you to see this slide every year. I think it was Ben Proto who asked me to go back and dig in and make sure that I did this for everybody. So what you're looking at on this slide is essentially our students that receive services from 2007 to now. Okay? That's the number of students we provide special education services to. From 2007 to 2023, we have monitored the enrollment figures of students benefiting from services within the Stratford Public Schools. In 2007, our service provision encompassed 757 students. The number since has grown to 1,334. The current academic year started with 1,275 students, and we've already added 59 additional students thus far. It's only February. As we transition into the PPT season, the Planning and Placement Team season, informed by my statistical analysis from last year, I anticipate us adding an additional 50 students with special education requirements by the end of the year. Notably right now, we have 82 students placed in out-of-district programs, and 2 of them are placed in residential settings. I'm going to go into a little bit about what we do in your service costs so that you understand the services that are provided to the Stratford Public Schools students. As you analyze the various costs encompassing clinical testing, in-service training, transportation, professional development, supplies for student services, it's vital to consider the breadth of services we offer our students with exceptional needs. This presentation outlines the services within these categories, including special education, social work, clinical service, extended school year service, testing, assistive technology, ABA therapy, nursing, contracted services, and all of these services are tailored to the requirements outlined in our students with IEPs. Okay, so these are coming directly from IEPs, and we are providing these services to our students. Notably, when we're forecasting the tuition for outplacements, you need to know that I typically budget for a 3% increase at each outplacement. This can pose a challenge. Because of there's challenges due to the absence of a cap in the out-of-district placement costs. We have made regular appeals to our legislative bodies for oversight on tuition hikes. We'd like to control these increases, but they remain elusive, making much of the projections inherently uncertain. And I'll give you an example. We had one of our outplacements this year increase costs by 14%. I budgeted for a 3% increase. They increased by 14%. We have gone to our state legislators and said, please, you need to make this stop. Like, there needs to be an actual cap so that people can't continue to increase the cost. The students are already placed there. You cannot just rip them out. So we do need to, continue to advocate for that. But that is uncertain every year. When I budget and say to you, this is what I'm projecting for the out-of-district placements for next year, it is an estimated guess based on a 3% increase. These are all the budget assumptions. Again, reflect staff needed for IEP services, outplacements and tuitions, and service vendors. Lastly, I believe it would be really beneficial for you to have a clear understanding of the number of programs we have expanded. It's important to note that these programs are designed to support students within the district, not only to fulfill their needs effectively, but also to help with cost-saving measures by avoiding the necessity of adding additional out-of-district placements. So as you delve into the expenditure spreadsheet, don't hesitate to ask me any further questions you may have, but basically each of these areas you see here were outlined in the services we provide. So as you look, I'll put this over here. As you look at the clinical costs, those are what I outlined for you in our services that we provide for nursing, ABA services, for our self-contained programs, and you are going to see an increase in those costs because we have added 59 additional students, many of which are in our current programs requiring additional services. This year we've had a huge increase in students requiring nurses, and we've had to contract nurse services in order to meet their needs. So that's your clinical cost. The testing and accommodations, you'll see an increase, but you'll see that our actual expenditures were 73, so we actually went down by going to 58. Those are the testing and equipment that we use in order to assess our children. Those are required, and when we do our testing, oftentimes a new version of the test comes out, and you have to buy it because the old version now is not allowed to be used. So you'll see that kind of go up and down each year depending on what requirements we have to fulfill. You can go through each of the sections and feel free to ask me any questions, but I essentially spoke to every single one of those. The health supplies, I think that was on Rich's slide, but it was actually mine. You'll see that those are all negative 100% because we purchased those out of ESSER and other accounts this year, so we don't need to do that for next year. So those were already reduced. I love some good special education questions.
For Ms. Borges. Mr. Dia.
It's on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm always curious as to, could you go back to the chart, the graph?
Yes.
That Ben, you guys worked on?
Yes.
So that's not gonna go down.
No.
No. So, and that's been one of the most frustrating things in my own personal feelings over the past 6 years is the state legislature has to understand that this trend is not gonna go down. And it's gonna continue to hurt towns like Stratford that are every year having this conversation about hardline numbers. I commend you for the work that you do, and I know it's not easy, but that's what I've always been fearful of is the long term, not just now, but 5 years from now. So please advocating to them.
We will. We'll definitely
Because it
continue
has
to
to
advocate.
change.
And you can see sometimes we do have a dip. In 2022, we had a huge graduating class out of both our transition program and the high school. It just built back up pretty quickly. And what I can say about your team in Stratford and the hardworking teams you have here, when I took on this job, there were 136 students outplaced. Because we have expanded our programs, because we have built up the capacity, we're down to 82 students outplaced. So that's a huge change, and it also welcomes our students back into the community. It's not just about the cost savings, they're part of what we do every day. And that makes us feel better about our jobs, feel better about their outcomes. So, we are continuing to try. We run into space constraints and we run into staffing constraints, and that's why you're seeing the clinical costs go up. Oftentimes when you bring students back and expand programs, it's BCBAs and BTs that you need, or nurses that you need in order to keep students here. That is still a cost savings compared to the out-of-district placements. And it is allowing the students to be part of our community. Any other special ed questions?
Mrs. Langston, Mr. Brennan.
First of all, Stratford is known for their special ed services that are provided by the town, and people move to Stratford if they have a student who has special ed needs because they know their child will be serviced here. So, and I think that's a pat on the back because not many districts can actually say that. That's number one. Number two, have we made, if you can go to the next, just keep going forward, please.
You tell me when.
The one right here. Have we made any, decisions yet about, the preschool program for next year for those students who cannot go to kindergarten?
So there's a process, and it's in place. We have shared with everybody. So students that are not of kindergarten age have to request a waiver.
Right, but if you don't wanna do that,
Then you stay in preschool.
so they'll be in the 4-year-old program again next year?
Yes.
Will there be different class, I guess what I'm trying to say is that so those kids don't find themselves to be too bored, will there be a preschool 4+1 class, or will they all be integrated?
We are working on that plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Just your last slide.
Sure.
And then it's page 61 in our budget book. Just the top object code, the 630.
Yep.
Can you speak to the volatility? You know, you have 4.9 in fiscal year 22, and 4.2, then it drops to 3.4, then up to 3.9.
Yep. So the large portion of that are the clinical services that we contract through Beacon Services. Beacon is the agency that comes in to provide our ABA program that has expanded. So you haven't been with us the whole time, but Susan can speak to it. We have added, I want to say, 4 ABA classrooms in the last few years to the elementary level. And we have expanded our ABA program both at our middle and our high school level. Most of the students in the ABA program require one-to-one BTs. So they are one-to-one students within our district. And so our contracts have been, we did go for a small stint, try to hire our own to see if we could do that. There's not enough out there for us to meet our current needs, so we ended up doing a bid. We went out to bid, and when we came back from the bid, Beacon had the best to offer us. So they are servicing our K-12 students in our self-contained programs. In addition to those are your clinical costs for your nurses that we have to contract to service our students that have one-to-one medical needs.
And just to kind of get more detail, what happened in 23 to drop by 800,000 actual to budget? Is that we brought it in-house and then that didn't work?
Yes, it didn't work. We got a few and then had to go back to bid. We just couldn't fill the amount of need. And I'll give you an example. Like for our district alone, in order to service all of our programs, you're talking approximately 52 BTs and 3 to 4 BCBAs. So we tried to hire those on our own and could not fill those positions.
We also did have a drop in the total number of students.
We did. That was the year where you see that's where you see
The dip.
217, 1,217. So there was a small dip in students as well, which I'm sure, helped on the area of maybe one-to-one nurses and, other services there. But special education, like when you say speak to volatility, it is what it is. We are on a roller coaster every year with special education, and we do the best we can, and I think we've done a great job of coming close to what we need. But we truly don't know when we're going to have years where lots of students move in or lots of students move out, or are currently our own students require IEPs and their services needs have increased.
Mr. Pia?
Just to Sue's point again, I have always heard that we've had a great special ed program, which again is a testament to the people running it. On the other hand, obviously if people are moving here because the word on the street is we have that, then it's good, we have to allocate a higher percentage, right? It's a double-edged sword. So my point is, I'm sure you can send it, does the state's got data on terms of our peers in terms of the trending up? Are we outpacing everybody else in Fairfield County or versus New Haven County? Like,
I know it is hard to believe, but we are almost in line with the state with the number of students with IEPs.
Okay.
We are close. Yes, the people around us have less, but the people around us sometimes outplace more.
right, and is that data you can get to us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
But we're close. We're not at the state's percentage, we're only a couple points above.
Mr. Ryan?
Along the same lines, I was just thinking about Milford, which is very similar to us in population, and their student population probably is also similar. Do we have any idea how many special ed students they have?
I haven't been in Milford in a long time. That is where I came from. And I would say they're not that similar. But all of that is on state data. You can pull
Milford
percentages.
has a very different
Yes,
population.
population.
Than Stratford.
But you can
They're not
pull
comparable.
the percentages for any district's special education percent right from the state. It's all there. And I'm happy to print that out and give that to you so you can see that every town has its own percentage.
Actually, it'd be good to have, I think, in talk with the state reps.
I will happily get it for you.
Mr. Hunter?
So the programs that we're now running at Honey Spot, where do they fall in?
So the program at Honey Spot is not a special education program. Remember, it's for all of our students. And that is under a grant. So that's being funded under Project Uplift. So you won't see that in your operating budget. That's a completely separate stop grant, federal stop grant to help reduce chronic absenteeism, students with aggressive behavior. And so again, that's not a special ed program. That's for any student in our secondary that needs that level of service.
And the program at Stratford High, I think it was Alpha Health?
Alpha is also a general education program, not listed under special ed. Alpha is your alternative program, which supports our student. They are still tied to Stratford High and Bunnell, but they can attend Alpha. And that's another program. If you guys want details on those programs, I'm happy to provide those to you.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. When you're outplacing a student, so there's 82 outplaced students, do you have a choice in where you put them, in what facility you put them, or what?
It's a process. They're sitting in the back smiling. They attend the PPT meetings. Remember, all of these decisions are PPT decisions, so you have an entire team that is working towards those decisions. We make a recommendation during that PPT in order to best meet the students' needs. So there are private approved programs, and then there are your RESC programs. And your RESC programs are less expensive, and we do often try, but right now your problem that you're running into, and again, we've addressed this with legislation, is there's not enough seats. So the programs don't have seats for kids. And then you're looking at the private approved programs. And so we have at the legislative breakfast, along with any other opportunity we get, advocated to increase our RESC seats so that we can meet more students' needs there. They are much more cost effective, but we have students that have been on waiting lists for 4 months to get the appropriate service that they need because there is no seat available.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hunter?
And so the governor's latest budget, we've seen some details on. How does that affect your programs?
I mean, our programs can be beautifully affected if IDEA was fully funded. It's not. So, we do the best that we can with what we have, and I'm always hopeful that new legislation and new federal guidelines are going to bring the funding, exactly what Chris said, right? You see an increase in numbers, you see an increase in need. We're hoping the federal and state governments look at that and say, we're going to increase our funding knowing you have more need. It's right in front of their faces. We just gotta wait for them to do it.
You just gotta hope they listen?
Yes. Yes, that would be ideal. But in Stratford, we're going to continue to service our students the best that we can, and we do a fantastic job.
Any further questions? No? Okay. Discussions, recommendations, anybody have anything to add here? Mr. Pia?
Thank you. I know we have one more meeting, UB Finance.
We have, your next meeting will be next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
For technology and, instructional supplies, equipment, and dues and fees. And then you did schedule a wrap-up session prior to the board meeting on February 26th.
Okay. Maybe one thought or one request, just again, we're going through this, there's a lot in flux right now. We're identifying opportunities, what have you. Maybe to this board, just maybe to Pam, can you start to put together some hypothetical scenarios with where the town's been trending from a budgeting process, what the town's been funding? If we're projected 6.6, what would 2 or 3 different things look like? I.e., if we sent over 5.5, if we sent over 4.5, if we sent over 3.5, and again, I am not identifying or saying anything to anybody right now. I am simply just saying from a logic standpoint, if we as a collective group have to identify things, is that something that you can kind of put together some basic projections for us?
Sure, so you're looking for various scenarios
Yes.
that we would recommend that would bring us down.
Yes,
to
and
the-
what things would look like, i.e., these things can never be removed because they're state mandated, so that's off the table, but these are other identified things.
We actually, I utilized something called a scorecard, which some of you from last year will recall, and we can easily not only provide you that information in that way, but as you discuss, as we present them and
Right.
you wanna tweak them, we can easily do the math for you here as well.
That'd be great, thank you.
I will say, those are challenging things to do. We will obviously do that, but I again make sure the finance committee knows and understands that, you know, we have very hardworking, wonderful humans in Stratford working hard for our kids every day. So when we provide things to you, please know to just be professional and sensitive. I said in the beginning, we're gonna have difficult conversations and we may not always agree, but I am always proud of the hard work we do here, and I know we may have some hard decisions to make. So we will do that, but those are difficult.
I totally agree with you and totally understand. You know, at the end of the day, we have been tasked with making sure that we can continue to operate this in an efficient way. So I like to see projections, and that's just how I operate, but I think that would be helpful.
Yep, we can do that.
I will say the 3.5% would probably be extremely challenging, so, I am a little bit concerned, but
I
we're
just
definitely
threw out
working
those
on
as
that.
example tranches.
Yep, I
So
got
would
you.
you be okay if we didn't go quite that low?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm not giving any, this is like open
Gotcha.
type thing.
We'll bring back some scenarios.
Thank you.
You got it.
I think we're all looking at the same picture in that we're gonna need to come down a little bit. I think that we're all seeing that, we're all feeling that. I don't know how that's gonna happen, but we will clearly work through that, and maybe some scenarios will definitely help that. Mr. Henry?
Yeah, so, I mean, one of the things that I've always tried to promote is looking at how we do things operationally. You know, I gave my little speech about 48.5 and, you know, not being stuck to the way things have always been done, but look at efficiencies. You know, a couple years ago, we saved $2.5 million by reorganizing our preschool and the Vicky Soto school. You know, I kind of wished we had done that prior to sending it over to the council, but we were forced to do it and we did it. But maybe we can look at some of those efficiencies, how we can better use. And I know, Ms. Boards, you've always done that with your special ed, your pupil services. Come back to us with different ways, like bringing students back to the district. But if we can look at maybe different scenarios or including some of those things in the scenarios, how we can better utilize our and the intent is to provide a better educational system for our kids and a better working environment for our staff. So if we can reorganize some of those things, maybe we could, you know, I'm guessing we all have different suggestions. Maybe we could forward those at some point to the chair, and you and her can sit down and you know, run through some of those scenarios and then come back to us at the next meeting with just some, you know, so we have some input from the board as well as.
I think that would be best. Right now, we love giving you guys what you're asking for, but when all of you are sending stuff to us right now, it's a little much. So if everyone could, if you have an idea or something specific you want us to look at, send it to the chair, and then you can share those with us and we can, and work on those.
You know, again, I don't know if you've had a chance to meet with the mayor, to talk about some, I've spoken to the mayor a couple times and I know she's, looking for a variety of ways. Every year, you know, anybody who's been on the council, watched the process, knows that it's difficult on both sides. Like any household budget or any business, every year you have to make hard choices. But having all the players involved, and I think, have you had conversations with the mayor?
Yeah, we have open communication and we intend to meet again this week.
Okay, awesome. So maybe if we can continue, well, if you guys can continue those conversations, and you know, and I think all parties working together is only benefits everybody. If they know where we're coming from, what our needs are, if we better understand where their situation is, we can, you know, hopefully work together and come to a conclusion that you know is acceptable for all parties. So that's awesome that you've met with her, and again, I appreciate all the hard work you've done on this, and hopefully we can continue and come to a conclusion where everybody is not upset, just most people.
Mrs. Lance?
Have we heard a number at all from,
I have not received a specific number.
for so many years that I've been on this committee, there's been very mixed feelings about what do we do, because you need what you need, and you would not have presented this budget to us if you really and truly did not need what you've asked for. So there were a couple of years when we didn't cut anything, we just went in with the budget as it was presented by the superintendent. Mike, what you said about the preschool, you wish we had done that before we had sent it over to the council. Personally, I think it's better that we waited till after we got the number, because if we had done that beforehand, let's say it was a 5% increase, I'm just saying that. And we said, well, for 4%, we'll do this, and then they're gonna say, aha, we only have to give them 3% because they'll find something else they could do. So we're between a rock and a hard stone. We need what we need, but yet is there any fluff in there that we can possibly cut? And right now, from what I've been sitting here listening, I don't see it yet. So
I think we can always make difficult decisions, and I see it from both perspectives. I can see it from Mike's perspective that, you know, making some hard decisions sooner helps us be a little more thoughtful. Sometimes, and you've been a part of these in the past, when we send something forward and get a much lower percentage later, we're making rushed decisions. So I think we all need to have perspective and work together. I certainly hope, you know, the town doesn't think, I can make them go even lower, right? I think
that's what I get nervous about.
But I'm hoping that that's not the case, and I don't feel that way. When I speak with the mayor, she seems to be pretty honest, and I know they have an entire town to budget for. So there are two sides, and we do need to restoratively work together. And I think a little bit of both, right? I think making hard decisions early helps us be more prepared. Also making sure that we are not impacting the education of our students. Your number one priority is to put forward a budget that's gonna meet our needs.
But I also don't feel that people sitting here, and this is not a negative comment, we don't have the expertise to make the cuts that you people can make for us, because you know exactly where those cuts have to be. We can make suggestions. I mean, I do have a few suggestions, but I don't know if they're the right suggestions. But going back to the preschool, Mike, I know that there was some flack about it, moving it. It is one of the best things that Stratford's done, really and truly. I go there every single day, and the program is working at Vicky Soto. I hate driving from Bunnell to Vicky Soto when I could drive from Bunnell to Second Lane. I could leave at 2 minutes before school opened. But you hear that all the time, no matter where you live in town. But it's a good running program.
Yes, Mr. Henry?
So just, and again, using the preschool example, it's something we should have done. I mean, you're saying it was a great program. If we weren't, in essence, mandated by the council to make that change, it might not have ever been done. So my point being is, why is we, as the adults in the room, as the leaders, why aren't we making these decisions now before we even send it over to the council? Because when we send over a budget to the council and they send it back, and we find a solution that provides a better service and saves $2.5 million, what do you think the average person in town thinks? What do you think the council thinks? They're just lazy and they're not doing their job? Why didn't they do it up front? That's what I thought when we sent that budget over, when we got it back. Why didn't we do our job up front? It's our responsibility. We at this table here are the leaders of the Board of Ed. We were elected and appointed to make these decisions, and we should be making some of those decisions before we're mandated to do them. And sometimes the mandates require us to make unpopular choices or choices we wish we didn't have to make. But sometimes we can make those decisions by taking a hard look at how we do things, reorganizing. As the statement was said, we found efficiencies through re-engineering. So if we make those decisions here ahead of time, it makes everybody's job a little easier. It allows us to save personnel, save stress to the working folks and the taxpayers as well. So in my opinion, we should do that hard work here before we're mandated to do it, because it allows us to provide better services, and why wouldn't we do that?
Do you have any ideas?
I do, and I'll forward them to our chair, and hopefully we can start those conversations and begin with that. But again, it's
Because we only have 2 more meetings, and
we're working on it. It's a month process. We're halfway into it. But like I said at my first meeting, and I don't know if you recall, 48 and a half, we're not going to horses behind decide how we do things. You know, a decision made by horses behind long ago is not gonna dictate, my opinion, how we do things moving forward, so.
Mr. Pia and Ms. D'Angelo Powers.
Glad you haven't spoken if you want.
Okay. Just to Mrs. Lance's point is, historically, when the Board of Ed projects their budget to the mayor, she has not come in and asked. So I just want to put that out to you because you had said hopefully you have trust in that. So historically, she has not come in and asked. She's always come in under. So I think we should keep that in mind. Also to the preschool program, that's at a cost, and that was to the cost of the students at Johnson. So I think we should need to remember that. You're all saying it's successful, but I don't know what you're basing that success on. Thank you.
Mr. Pia.
I'll just say, just again, having gone through this process on the other side, right, I think the way that you and your staff are approaching this year is excellent, and I want that to be known. From my perspective in the years past, it was tougher. I wanted to wait till the last day, if you will, from the state legislature passing their budget so that we can know what the ECS funding was coming in at, right? That was the true way to do good planning, in my humble opinion. Get an actual number, have the council pass it. If there was going to be a decrease, then it gives you guys time. Being that the state legislature this session, I believe, is a shorter session, we're going to have a bigger window. The council doesn't have to pass their budget till mid-May. So I like laying this all out for people because this is going to be another few months basically of working together. I know our committee and then obviously you guys of laying out these scenarios as well as the retirements and all the other projections. So there's more, I see more in flux, right? And obviously opportunity.
And I just want to be clear, I'm not saying that she's going to give us the percentage we asked for, because again, a mayor's budgeting for a whole town. What I trust is that she's not sitting there saying they can cut more. I think that she does understand that if we come in at a lower amount, any cuts that we have to make are detrimental to our programs in schools. So I'm not saying that I think we're going to get exactly what we're asking for, right? I hope we do. Everyone here should hope that whatever we put forward we get, but that's not what I was saying.
And I will just say, just from historical, I've been doing this for 20 years, and the board, I don't think in the 20 years has ever gotten, with a town manager, with a council, town manager forum, with two other mayors, 3 altogether, I don't believe there's been one budget that the board got that they requested. So I think from a historical standpoint, that's just the nature of that's just the nature of things. But I think, again, this has been a good communication and a good open process, and
I think we're right in line with every town. We are all dealing with a fiscal cliff. And most towns are requesting higher budget. Most Board of Eds are requesting higher budgets to their towns to deal with the fiscal cliff. And we have kind of a double cliff because we have our fiscal cliff, and then we were lucky enough to get $1 million from the town last year extra, but we had to build that back in too. So we have, a couple cliffs that we're dealing with, and that is the same as all the towns around us. So we are all just trying to make sure that we do the best that we can.
Any other questions, comments, discussions?
Just can't help but think about the state. That's going to be such a big part of the picture. And they are in a very good position now financially, so hopefully they come forward with more money for schools. I can only hope.
Well, we're good. Okay, so our next meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday, the 21st. Review of technology, educational supplies, equipment, dues, and fees budgets. If there are no other questions, I'll take the motion to adjourn. Motion made by Mr. Pia, second by Mr. Kennedy. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Have a good night, everybody.